There comes a moment in every woman's life when silence speaks louder than relationships, when solitude becomes a mirror, and when the world begins to test who she really is. And in that moment, a woman without a boyfriend discovers something most people never find: the strength to rise without permission, to grow without validation, and to love herself before anyone else ever can. A woman without a boyfriend begins her journey in a place most people overlook: the quiet space where she finally has the chance to meet herself. And in that silence, she starts discovering a truth far more powerful than any relationship could ever offer. She is stronger, more capable, and more full of potential than she ever realized. The world often teaches her that wholeness comes from another person, that fulfillment is found in being chosen, that happiness is tied to partnership. But when she stands alone, she learns something revolutionary. She doesn't have to wait for anyone to choose her when she can choose her own life first. This stage of life gives her the room to rebuild the foundation she stands on. She starts to understand her patterns, her wounds, and her desires with clarity. She begins noticing the parts of her life that were shaped by other people's expectations and starts replacing them with what she truly wants. She notices how often she used to bend her identity to fit into someone else's story. And she finally steps into the moment where she begins writing her own. This is where she rediscovers her own voice, not the one filtered through fear, validation, or insecurity, but the one that speaks from courage, purpose, and conviction. In this season, she learns to generate her own energy. She no longer seeks someone else to lift her up or give her motivation. She becomes the source. She becomes the one who sets her standards, who raises her goals, who wakes up each morning with the intention to grow. And the more she invests in herself, her mind, her body, her purpose, the more she feels herself transforming into someone she can be proud of. This internal evolution creates a confidence that cannot be taken away, because it wasn't given by anyone else. It was built, earned, and forged through self-discipline and self-awareness. She also begins to see relationships with new eyes. Instead of needing one to feel complete, she sees them as a choice she will one day make from abundance, not desperation. She realizes that love will come, but it must come into a life she has already strengthened, not one she hopes someone else will fix. And because she is not emotionally dependent on someone being there, she becomes more selective, more patient, more grounded. She stops entertaining people who drain her, confuse her, or diminish her. Her self-respect grows, her boundaries strengthen, and her vision becomes sharper. She no longer fears being alone, because she knows she is not waiting. She is evolving. And in that evolution, she discovers something beautiful. Solitude is not empty, it is preparation. It is the place where she heals the emotional scars she used to hide behind. It's where she learns what love should actually feel like. Not chaos, not insecurity, not guessing, but peace, clarity, and partnership. She realizes she deserves a relationship that doesn't cost her her identity, and she refuses to settle for anything less. This shift alone changes the entire direction of her future. Every day she spends growing, learning, building, and believing. She becomes a woman who will never again accept less than she deserves. She becomes a woman who can stand confidently in her own presence, who can walk into any room without needing someone to justify her worth, who can build a life so strong that when love does come, it adds to her world. It doesn't become her world. This is the first transformation, understanding that being without a boyfriend is not a weakness, not a gap, not a delay. It is the exact environment where a woman becomes powerful, self-sufficient, and unstoppable. When a woman walks through life without a boyfriend, she steps into a chapter where she finally has the freedom to build the relationship that matters most, the one she has with herself. This is the phase where she learns to stop looking outward for what she has the power to create within. She discovers that peace is something she can generate, confidence is something she can build, and happiness is something she can choose. And because she's not pouring her time, energy, and heart into someone else, she suddenly has the capacity to pour all of that into her own growth. In this space, she becomes deeply aware of the patterns that used to hold her back. She notices how often she used relationships as a distraction from her own goals, how she sometimes sacrificed her dreams to maintain harmony, or how she allowed the presence of someone else to define her direction. Now, with this clarity, she starts reclaiming her time and her priorities. For the first time, she begins asking herself questions she once avoided. Who am I becoming? What do I want? What kind of life am I building? The answers to these questions begin shaping her identity in a way relationships never did. As she invests more into herself, she starts developing emotional independence, the kind that frees her from needing validation attention, or constant reassurance. She realizes that her worth is not tied to someone's opinion or affection. She learns to comfort herself, motivate herself, and celebrate herself. This shift is powerful because it rewires her internal system. She no longer crumbles when someone leaves or panics when someone doesn't stay. She knows she can survive, rebuild, and rise on her own. Emotional independence becomes her armor, not because she's closed off, but because she has finally strengthened the foundation inside her. This period of growth also reshapes her priorities. She stops worrying about timelines and starts focusing on alignment. She's not looking for someone, she's becoming someone. Someone with discipline, purpose, ambition, and standards. She starts pouring her energy into learning new skills, building her future, or investing in her health. She begins to see results, not because someone pushed her, but because she pushed herself. That sense of accomplishment gives her a deeper level of confidence, the kind that cannot be shaken by rejection or loneliness. Through this journey, she also discovers the value of protecting her space. She becomes selective with who she lets into her life, because she now understands that peace is priceless. She's no longer entertained by inconsistency, confusion, or emotional games. She doesn't chase affection because she knows her energy is precious. She refuses to settle for halfway love or temporary comfort because she's already learned how to provide stability for herself. Her standards rise not out of arrogance but out of self-respect. What makes this phase even more transformative is how she begins to treat herself. She becomes kinder to her mind, more patient with her growth, and more intentional with her choices. She no longer beats herself down for not being in a relationship. Instead, she appreciates the freedom this chapter gives her. She uses this time to heal past wounds, reprogram limiting beliefs, and build a healthier, stronger version of herself. And as she does that, she opens the door to a future where she can love without losing herself. By the time she finishes this chapter, she stands taller, thinks clearer, and loves deeper. Not because someone taught her how to, but because she learned how to give herself what she once expected others to provide. Her transformation becomes undeniable. She isn't just a woman without a boyfriend. She is a woman who has discovered her power, created her peace, and built an unshakable relationship with herself. There comes a turning point in a woman's life when she stops seeing her single season as a waiting room and starts seeing it as a launching pad. This is where the most profound transformation happens, when she realizes that being without a boyfriend gives her the freedom to build a future with intention, clarity, and purpose. Instead of drifting through life reacting to circumstances, she begins designing the life she wants to live. And because she is not tied to someone else's expectations or limitations, she finally has the space to dream bigger, move bolder, and create a vision that reflects who she truly wants to become. In this phase, she begins to understand that her life is entirely in her hands. Every choice she makes, how she spends her mornings, what she focuses on, the habits she cultivates, the boundaries she sets, all of it shapes her destiny. Without the emotional noise or compromises that often come with relationships, she gains a level of clarity that allows her to be brutally honest with herself. She starts identifying what truly matters: her health, her growth, her financial stability, her emotional peace, her ambitions. She understands that the future she desires will not fall into her lap. It must be built day by day through intention and discipline. She also begins to notice how powerful her environment is. She becomes aware of the people she spends time with, the energy she surrounds herself with, and the goals she aligns with. She stops tolerating friendships or environments that drain her potential. She distances herself from negativity, drama, and anything that distracts her from her path. Instead, she starts gravitating towards spaces that challenge her, inspire her, and elevate her. She surrounds herself with people who push her to grow, who remind her of her greatness, and who align with where she is heading, not where she has been. As she walks this path, she begins to build a version of herself that no relationship can complete, because she is already complete. She becomes someone who sets her own standards for peace, success, and happiness. She becomes someone who knows exactly what she brings to the table. And because her vision for her life becomes so clear, she stops entertaining anything less than what aligns with her purpose. She doesn't chase temporary feelings, she invests in long-term fulfillment. She doesn't settle for someone who disrupts her peace. She waits for someone who matches her energy. She doesn't fear being alone, she fears losing herself by settling. This is also the season where she learns to trust her own decision-making. She no longer second-guesses every step or questions whether she is enough. She becomes confident in her choices because they are rooted in her values, not someone else's. She starts achieving milestones she once thought were out of reach. She becomes financially stronger, emotionally wiser, mentally sharper. And each achievement becomes proof that she is capable of building a life that reflects her power and potential. Eventually, she looks back and realizes that this season, the one she once thought was empty, was actually the most productive chapter of her life. It was the chapter that molded her into a woman who can create her own opportunities, protect her own peace, and walk into her future with confidence. It was the chapter that taught her she doesn't need a relationship to feel valuable or complete. And when love does arrive someday, it will enter a life that is already full, already purposeful, and already powerful. She becomes the kind of woman who doesn't just hope for a better future. She builds it. She becomes the architect of her destiny, the protector of her peace, and the author of her story. And that is the ultimate transformation. Realizing that she doesn't wait for life to happen to her, she creates the life she knows she deserves.